Welcome back to the Smart Investing Show, and this is the part of the show where we talk about financial planning. For that, we turn to our financial planning expert, Harrison Johnson, the CFP. Harrison, you may be entitled to spousal Social Security. This is something that really confuses people because of divorce and everything else. How does this work?
There's something specific that I want to bring up that I've seen a couple times now. Now, a spousal benefit with Social Security means if you have a spouse that worked, paid into Social Security, if they are eligible for something, then that means you as a spouse are potentially eligible for something as well. However, earlier this year, there was something called a government pension offset and a windfall elimination provision, but this is specifically more about this government pension offset. It was a rule that said if you had a spouse that worked and paid into Social Security, received Social Security, if you had a job where you worked and earned a pension and did not pay into Social Security, like if you were a teacher and are on CalSTRS, or if you were a firefighter or a police officer or something like that, this government pension offset reduced any spousal benefit that you would be eligible for from that Social Security working spouse. But that has been removed. And so the thing I want to bring up is I've seen this a couple times where you might have a couple that retired a couple years ago. One spouse is on Social Security. The other spouse is receiving their pension. Now, because of that repeal this year, that pension earning spouse is entitled to receive a Social Security benefit from that working spouse because that rule no longer prevents it. But the Social Security Administration is not aware of that happening, so that person needs to go and apply with Social Security to start getting that going. And that might be $1,000 to $2,000 a month that they're not receiving that they are now eligible for. So it's something that's very important. If you have a spouse that is receiving Social Security and another spouse that is receiving a pension, and if that pension-earning spouse, when they originally applied, if they're not receiving anything from Social Security, you potentially are eligible for it. You need to reach out to Social Security as soon as possible and see if there's anything that you're not collecting.
And I'm surprised about this because I think it's now 8 years away when Social Security is supposed to be a pay-go system where like what goes in is what gets paid out. This seems like that's going to cause us to get there faster.
Oh, it absolutely will.
Yeah.
So part of me is like, maybe we don't say this because, but you're right. So the logic behind this rule was right now, if you have a spouse who never worked at all, never paid into Social Security, but they're married to somebody who did, that spouse that never worked is eligible for a spousal benefit. And that's always been the rule, or it's been in the rule for a very long time. With this government pension offset, it said, okay, well, even though this spouse never paid into Social Security and really should be eligible for a spousal benefit, we're going to reduce that because they have this pension.
Right.
So why is that person that had a job and paid into a pension being penalized when a non-working spouse isn't? That's kind of the reasoning for it. But the fact of the matter is it no longer applies. So I know that there's people out there, because I've seen it, where they are not collecting something that they're now eligible for.
Yeah, but
Jeez,
if you're
I see
working,
you're looking like, what?
so if you're working and paying into Social Security though as a spouse, then obviously your spousal benefit might be less, right? Or you're going to claim your own benefit.
So if you worked into Social Security, your own benefit potentially is going to be higher.
Yeah,
But
if it's not, then can you also collect off your spousal benefit?
So you collect the higher of the two. So
Okay.
if you worked and your spouse worked and both paid into Social Security, when you go to apply, you're what's called deemed to be filing for all benefits you're eligible for. So that means if your own benefit is higher, you'll get that one. If it's lower because you had low earnings or low earning history or whatever, that in your spousal benefits higher, you'll get that spousal benefit. So that's automatic.
Yeah, because the way I look at it is like, well, but if you're in the pension system, you kind of get benefits. I mean, obviously our wives worked in the CalSTRS system, and it's like, well, you're not getting Social Security, but you are getting a nice benefit on the other side for not getting that Social Security, and it's an amplified benefit. So to me, it's double dipping.
Yeah.
That you're getting the better benefit, and then also you're getting the Social Security benefit. So, I mean, obviously it's not for me to decide on the political front, but again, my big concern is, as you brought up, what are we going to do with Social Security?
It is double dipping. But if my feeling is if you're excluding a spouse because they worked and paid into a pension, you should also exclude spouses that stayed home and didn't work at all. Yeah. And so right now, the spouse that stayed home is eligible for a spousal benefit. They've always been. So this is just leveling that playing field. Now, the bigger question is, what are we going to do because we're running out of money? I mean, that's a whole other conversation.
That's a big problem.
That's a big problem that needs to be addressed, and something needs to change with that as well. No one wants to talk about it because it's not popular. Okay, well, we either have to increase taxes on something or we have to cut benefits on something or some combination of there in between. Nobody wants to, address that. They're talking more about, well, let's just, make it more tax-free or, give more benefits or increase benefits. We're going to run out at some point, and that, that's going to, the longer that gets delayed is going to make it worse.
My viewpoint is at this point in time, the most likely scenario I see is just you flip the switch and you allow it to create deficit spending.
Yeah.
That's probably what's going to happen. Right now, under U.S. law, the federal debt cannot fund Social Security benefits. That's the way it's written right now. So that law would need to change, but that's probably going to happen because if we get to a point where that trust fund is essentially empty, yes, there's people still working. So if you have a W-2, if you're self-employed, you're paying into the system, but that's not enough to pay out all of these benefits, especially with, the repeal of this windfall elimination provision, government pension offset. So, we're going to run out sometime in the 30s, probably the early 30s, and there's going to be needed to be changes.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem. And then what I said in the beginning, too, was even divorced spouses, even though they're divorced, they would still get this as well.
Let me think. So...
And I know I caught you off guard on that.
Yes, yes. So if now, depending on the length of the marriage, if the marriage, I think you had to be married for 10 years, if I remember correctly, then that means if you are divorced from your spouse, you can still collect a spousal benefit off of them. So if you were collecting a pension and not receiving anything from Social Security, if you're divorced, you potentially can go apply and now collect a spousal benefit from your spouse that you divorced at some point. So yeah.
Wow. Crazy. They just keep draining that fund, and then like, oh, we have no money. What happened?
And I mean, the next presidential cycle is 2028. That person, in theory, would be in office when the Social Security Trust Fund runs out.
They are going to need to address it. Yeah. I mean,
So-
whether it's 32, 33, 34, depending on, how it's kind of functioning. But it'll be in the later stage of that presidency, so they're going to have to deal with it.
So that'll be interesting to see how that next presidential cycle goes and how they're going to attack Social Security. And that's why I think at this point, nobody wants to cut benefits. Nobody wants to raise taxes. So I think it's just going to be another debt that is accrued and adds to our national debt.
We talk about not cutting benefits, but this kind of added more benefit is what you're saying.
It increased benefits.
Increased benefits.
Yeah. So increased benefits, increased outflows from that trust fund, and it's been slowly depleted for quite a while now. So I think we'll have increased taxes. I mean, the same thing is happening with Medicare. The net investment income tax was put in place quite a while ago into the Obama era. So that was a tax on investment income to help fund Medicare. We could see something like that where it's not necessarily a payroll tax. It could be investment tax or wealth tax. Who knows? I mean, who knows what politicians will come up with.
Well, Harrison, next week, bring some good news. Okay.
All right. I'll make sure. Well, this is good news if you're if you can qualify for that. Yeah.
But I'm thinking about the millions of taking Social Security that it's running out. So, but thank you very much. Again, that's Harrison Johnson. He is our financial planner. He is a CFP. If you want a free consultation with him, give him a call at the office, 858-224-0004. Again, that's 858-224-0004. Or go to the website, smartinvesting2000.com. Again, that's smartinvesting2000.com. You get that free consultation as well. And he has a lot of things he covers. If you listen to the show on a regular basis, he covers many different things. Kind of caught him off guard in that one question about the divorce, but he thought about it. Yes, he had the answer. So